Hello everyone, this is Joe Brewer here from the Design School for Regenerating Earth. Today we have a special session, a special webinar in our series for the learning journey, How to Organize Your Bioregion. Today we're going to talk about how we are living into the design pathway for regenerating Earth in a time of accelerating collapse. What I'd like to do is review the learning journey as it's happened so far because it started in March of 2025 and it runs for 6 months through September of 2025, and we've had 8 sessions so far. So we began with a kickoff webinar giving a basic groundwork and context for what is the design school, what is our planetary context, and what is the purpose of this learning journey so people would know what to expect. And then we went into a session on how water organizes us to look at how a living systems lens, something more than human, gives us a way of understanding how the planet organizes life and how it naturally organizes itself to the bioregional scale. This led us to our third webinar on design immersions as a way of organizing ourselves so that we take a holistic bioregional lens and we immerse ourselves in the real world experience of our own local context and invite other people from our community to join us. This led us to our fourth session on what is the felt experience of the practice of bioregional organizing. What does it feel like? What does it look like? How do you do it? And with that knowledge, we were able to then go more deeply into the exploration of the bioregional mind and how our imaginations need to be organized within the living systems of our place so that we cultivate a bioregional point of view, a bioregional perspective. Now from there, we needed to explore how to create pro-social groups and collaborate so that we could restore watersheds or large landscape systems. And that led us to the 3 pillars of bioregional regeneration, which are a tapestry of regenerative projects organized within landscape systems, together with a bioregional learning ecosystem, and the third pillar being a funding and governance system for the territory to manage its affairs. And this was exemplified in practice in work that's taking place in the Greater Tkaronto bioregion in what's present-day Ontario. And then the 8th webinar that we had was called Dreaming into Regenerative Futures, where we invited members of the design school who have already been hosting design immersions to share their experience and tell their stories. And we learned about the work of bioregional Thames and an immersion that took place on the River Thames in the southern part of the United Kingdom. And we learned about the work of Terra and a design immersion that took place in Tarn-et-Garonne in southern France. Now, as all of these webinars have been happening within the design school, we have been embedded in a larger context of an accelerating pattern of societal breakdown and ecological collapse, as you can see in any news feed of every social media platform on Earth. That we're watching the breakdown of civil order, we're watching the breakdown of nation states, we're watching the crossing of tipping points of the Earth system. And all of this is happening around us as we go through our learning journey, which begs the question, where do we go from here in the learning journey itself? How can we move from these beautiful topics and some of the practices that are taking place among our members to where humanity is being called to in this time of accelerating societal breakdown and ecological collapse? And that's the topic of this webinar that we're having today. So I'd love to go back and just take a little bit bigger picture view for a moment so that we can see how the way that we're approaching bioregional organizing is embedded within a much larger pattern. Part of this larger pattern is the history of the bioregional movement itself. The early bioregional movement began in the 1970s and 80s. There were bioregional congresses that were held all the way up until 2010. And most of the organizing that took place, most of the power and thinking of the bioregional movement took place in the 80s and 90s. But starting in the late 1980s, as the environmental movement was really taking hold, there was an intentional neoliberal takeover of the environmental movement, where most of the environmental discourse got captured in reductionistic techno fixes, focusing all of the health and well being of the planet on narrow measures like the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and of course, multinational corporation and capitalistic solutions to all of our environmental problems. And while that massive distraction was taking place, there was the birth of the regenerative movement and then another pulse of bioregional thinking that began about 10 years ago and is really going strong right now. But all of this is embedded within a planetary process that includes the fact that we crossed the planetary carrying capacity and entered ecological overshoot at a planetary scale sometime around 1975. And this comes from looking at the study of ecological footprint, where we found it takes more than one planet to manage all of the materials that are consumed at a planetary scale. And that started sometime between 1972 and 1976, depending on how you measure it. And of course, throughout this entire time, there has been a growing, accelerating, and intensifying process of socio-ecological collapse. And so this collapse has been taking place way before the learning journey, and it's going to continue well after it. So we knew this was coming. And there's a question right now. Are there people out there who are ready to invest in large-scale regenerative work and the regeneration of the planet? This is a big question, but it's a question that has a timeline. Will there be a one-time infusion of large amounts of funding into this space? So far, it hasn't happened, and if it does happen, it needs to happen soon before the global financial system goes down. And the big question is, what happens here? What happens after this planetary scale collapse process comes to completion? Did humans go extinct? Did we learn how to find harmony within the living Earth? Or did we not? And that's the big question that guides and shapes everything we do in the design school and in this learning journey specifically. So what's interesting about our learning journey is that we have about 860 members in the design school right now, and 278 of those members have filled out a simple form to tell us where they're located. And these are members of the design school who are participating in this learning journey. And I just want you to notice that while they don't cover the entire planet, they cover a pretty big part of it, which reveals the potential for what we can do with the rest of this learning journey as we organize ourselves in a place-based fashion in so many different places at the same time. So the question, where do we go from here? Within the learning journey, we have two answers. And those two answers are that you could host your own design immersion, meaning you could organize your own bioregional design process within your own landscape as part of this learning journey. Or if you're familiar with the R3.0 conference that's taking place in September, where they're talking about bioregional resilience in a time of planetary collapse, they're encouraging people to host bioregional conferences or bioregional confluences during their conference. So you could host a bioregional confluence as part of the R3.0 online conference, or you could host a design immersion with other members of the design school during this learning journey. Now, why are we doing this? Is so we can have more places organizing as we weave a planetary network of bioregions that can help us to regenerate the Earth as a whole. And so you can see that where we're going is Earth regeneration, but we're doing it by organizing within our own bioregions. So when we look at the rest of the learning journey that remains, you'll see that there are only 5 sessions left. The one that's taking place today, today's webinar on July 8th, the final webinar will be on September 2nd, and I already know that our closing topic will be to explore what happens beyond the learning journey as it comes to an end. That leaves us with these 3 sessions. Every 2 weeks we have a webinar. So there are 3 more webinars where we can build towards something, which begs the question, what are we building toward? What can this learning journey move us toward by the time we get to that final session on September 2nd? So I want to let you in on a little secret, a little trick that we played. So You might have joined the design school to participate in a learning journey as if the learning journey was an online course. But the design school is like a Trojan horse. It pretends to be an online course, but it's actually something much more powerful, which is why our members pay monthly membership dues and they don't pay course fees. So if we're not an online course, if we're not just this learning journey, then what are we? And the answer is we're a community of practice. We are earth regenerators, practicing regenerating the earth in many different places around the world with a very large diversity of social supports to help us learn together so that we can coordinate up to the planetary scale. We're a community of practice, much more than we're an online course. So some of the examples of things that we've built in the past that exist right now in the design school as ways to be part of a community of practice. Notice that everything I'm about to mention is in addition to our learning journey. First of all, we have a bioregional mapping guild to learn about bioregional mapping. We have the inner space for developing all of the inner work that you need to do to be able to be a regenerator of the earth. We have a bioregional leaders guild where people come together and cultivate their leadership capacities and support systems for leading the bioregional movement. We have a connection center with a variety of ways that you can connect with other members of the design school and build relationships with each other. We have a regenerative finance lab where we explore real-world case studies of bioregional finance and just regenerative finance more generally. We have a member lounge where our members share information and resources with each other and just get to know each other. We have bioregional learning exchanges where different bioregions share what's happening and you can learn from one bioregion to another. We have the Earth Regeneration Fund for pooling resources and flowing them into bioregions to activate and catalyze them and support their regenerative work. We have bioregional resource hubs for a growing number of bioregions where our members host regular calls, share resources, and are actually organizing in their own bioregions. We have a permaculture design course that is designed to teach people permaculture connected to bioregional organizing with other members of the design school. There's a book club for people to just come together socially and to explore topics more deeply together. There's regenerative constellations to take the family constellations therapeutic framework and apply it to the regeneration of our bioregions. There are partner spaces where we collaborate with other regenerative communities and other regenerative leaders within the movement to build frameworks of partnership and synergy across the movement as a whole. And there are theme dialogues where members of the school can teach each other things. So all of this is happening. We've already built it, which means we don't need to build any more. The design school is full of a lot of diverse ways for us to support each other in learning how to regenerate the earth. So the question is, where are we going and what do we need to build toward? What I want to suggest is if we think about the entire planet and we notice that our members live in different places, as our members practice organizing, we end up with a network of places where people are organizing bioregionally. And because of learning exchanges, we support them to learn from each other from one territory or one bioregion to the other. So now what I want you to do is to imagine a planetary network of place-based efforts where we sustain this kind of engagement over long periods of time and support and actively invest in learning exchanges between the bioregions. And how do we do this? What do we focus on? We focus on bioregional learning ecosystems, the web of ways to learn how to live in right relationship to your local place. And we focus on large-scale regeneration, the restoration of rivers, the restoration of ecosystems, the creation of regenerative economies at bioregional scales. Just imagine members of the design school operating as an ongoing network of learning exchanges in multiple locations simultaneously and mobilizing resources to support themselves and each other as a planetary network. So, what are we building toward in the rest of the learning journey? We're building toward the infrastructure for ongoing exchanges after the learning journey is over across the existing planetary network of bioregions represented by members of the design school. So for those of you who don't know, we're actually living out what I wrote about 5 years ago. In the beginning of 2020, I created a study group for the manuscript of this book that was later published, The Design Pathway for Regenerating Earth. And the design pathway explains that what we need to do is exactly what the design school is doing. Or said another way, by being a member of the design school, you are living into the design pathway for regenerating Earth. So this is, I would say, like there's a plan, there's a logic, there's a clarity to what we're doing, and I wrote it all down 5 years ago. More recently, when we began the design school in March of 2023, we hosted our first learning journey, and our first learning journey was called What is the Design School? Because what we were doing was so different that we needed to run a learning journey just to explain what it was. So in the very first webinar of the design school, in the very first month of the design school, more than 2 years ago, I created this slide that I'm going to show you now. Just to say that this was thinking we had from the onset of the design school. So the design school is a place that is intentionally applied. We're not just developing theory and being abstract. We want to apply what we learn in real-world context. There are nested levels of practice, from healing yourself to working in your community to regenerating a continent to regenerating the earth as a whole. That our approach is profoundly holistic, that it takes place not online but takes place in the world through the practices of our members, that it is inherently complex, and that it is ever evolving. And remember, this is exactly the slide I used in March of 2023. We said that the design school takes place as we are living through ecological collapse, as tipping points of the Earth system are crossed in both social and planetary systems. So what we're living through right now in this learning journey was part of our consciously stated purpose of the design school within the first 2 weeks of opening its doors. We knew that everything we do would happen as we were living through ecological and societal collapse. So we were ready for this, which is why we started laying the groundwork a couple years ago. So, what is it that we're doing? Through the Earth Regeneration Fund that launched in September of 2024, but that was articulated in Earth Regenerators in a webinar I gave in April of 2020, the Earth Regeneration Fund is a tapestry of stories. So what we did this year is, through the Bioregional Earth website, here are pictures of some of them, we have been telling stories. And I just want you to note that we are already doing this. And the key mechanism is place-based organizing. If you look at the article on the upper right, Kayaking the River Thames, that is Richard Coates, a member of the design school, telling the story of what happened after he received financial support from the Earth Regeneration Fund to host a design immersion as part of this learning journey. And you can see that we are funding each other, collaborating with each other, and supporting place-based organizing, while at the same time weaving a tapestry of stories that tell us how to regenerate the earth as a whole. Now, a few months ago, I gave another webinar on the narrative strategy for the Earth Regeneration Fund. So this is something I already said several months ago, and this was one of the slides that I used back then. I said the narrative strategy is this: support local organizing teams to create bioregional frameworks, which is what this learning journey is all about. Create flow funding to support a tapestry of local efforts. We have been mobilizing funding, including through membership dues, and flowing them in to these bioregional frameworks to support local efforts. And then, through a reciprocity agreement with those who receive funding from us, we have them tell stories about what is happening in each place. And through Bioregional Earth and the Design School, we weave these stories into planetary frameworks. We are already doing this now, and the learning journey started after we began this strategy, and this strategy will continue after the learning journey ends. In another webinar I gave multiple months ago, I included this graphic saying as the system breaks down, we need to weave a pattern of place-based efforts, flow funding to bioregional teams, build coherence across networks of bioregions, and form a planetary tapestry to regenerate the Earth. Notice I'm repeating myself because we have been so consistent that this is what the design school is doing. The design school is not hosting a learning journey. The learning journey is scaffolding as a part of this planetary tapestry to regenerate the Earth. So the question for us for the rest of this learning journey is this: how do we leverage this learning journey to bring this much larger process to the next level? And how can we use the next 3 webinars to make progress in building the capacity to upscale, to up-level everything that each of us is doing as we collaborate in this planetary tapestry to regenerate the Earth? And now what I want to do is ask my co-founder, Penny Heipel, to read a poem to us that really captures the spirit of this moment. And the poem that she's going to read was written by her friend that she can introduce briefly in this essay, What in the World is Going On?, that Julie Kroll wrote just a couple weeks ago. So Penny, over to you.
Thanks so much, Joe. So as you ponder that last question that Joe posed, what's the next step? Where do we go from here? I'd like you to just sit back, relax, maybe close your eyes to take in this writing from my friend Julie Kroll. This is called What in the World is Going On? What in the world is going on? Seriously. Have you looked around lately? The systems are glitching, the headlines are howling, the old guard is grasping, and somewhere between doom scrolling and the next inflation spike, your soul whispers, this isn't it. You're not crazy, you're clear. Let's name it. The world we knew is unraveling, but maybe that's not a problem. Maybe it's a prophecy. Because this tired play of power, separation, and control, it's not just broken, it's bankrupt. They're still out there performing CPR on a dinosaur, trying to resuscitate systems built on fear, hierarchy, and extraction. But here's the truth. The real burnout? The tired ideas we keep fueling, hoping they'll still take us somewhere new. And we're not here to fix the old world. We're here to midwife the new. Because deep in the marrow of our bones, a different story is pulsing. Not panic, but presence. Not collapse, but coherence. Not chaos, but co-creation. This is the turning. We are no longer hypnotized by the illusion of separation. We've seen through the smoke and mirrors. The veil has lifted, the matrix cracked. Why? Because we remember. We remember the beat of belonging, the rhythm of reciprocity, the unmistakable hum of unity vibrating just beneath the noise. We were never separate, not from each other, not from earth, not from the sacred. We were only asleep in a dream that made us forget. But the dream has ended. We are waking, not in rebellion, but in revelation. This isn't about being better. It's about becoming whole. This isn't about ascending. It's about embodying. This isn't about escaping. It's about returning home to our true nature. We are the pulse of the possible, the alchemists of the new architecture, the ones who see the cracks and plant gardens there. Let's get clear. The unitive age isn't some shiny utopia arriving on a cloud of enlightenment. It's here, now, in how we lead, in how we love, in how we refuse to pretend anymore. The revolution isn't televised. It's cellular. It's in the coherence between your heart, your mind, and the field. It's in the way you breathe before you speak. It's in the holy pause where a new world finds its voice. It's in the fierce softness of choosing love anyway. We are the ones we've been waiting for, but we're not waiting anymore. No illusion can rupture the resonance of our wholeness. We are in repair, and our hearts know how to restructure, revive, and rise into renaissance. We are not the end of something, we are the beginning of everything. So if you've felt the tremble beneath the surface, if your spirit is side-eyeing the status quo, if your soul is screaming, there's got to be more than this, you're right, there is. And it's not out there, it's in here, in us, together. Let's rise, let's love, let's build the future our hearts never forgot. Welcome to the unitive age. It's about time, and you were born for it.
And so, with that, let's discuss, where do we go from here? Onward, fellow humans.